Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us again today. We have a special, well, we have a special guest, but we also have a special co-host. And so Masa, as you guys know, is my partner to Meet RX here, and one of the wonderful reasons why we have this wonderful community and platform. Masa, you can unmute yourself and join us if you want to, and then we just got to find our guest and see if I can find our guest. Is Joseph in there? All right, I'm gonna unmute him as well. Let me see if I can find him. Where did he go? Hang on a second. There he is. All right. Okay, so we should have three people able to chat. Maz, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Glad to be
Okay.
here.
And then we've got Joseph is here, correct?
Hey, yeah. How you doing?
I'm good. Hey, welcome. Thank you for being here. I know we have a lot of people that are excited to have you here. Mas in particular, she even asked if she could co-host because she's such a big fan of your work. And so I'm going to let her, she gets some questions as well. But I know I guess what sort of brought the attention of you to this community is you kind of did a video, and I saw it, I think it was about a year and a half ago, maybe, or 2 years ago or something like that, about this diet. And it was actually fair. It wasn't one of these typical, mainstream media, it's just crazy and silly, and maybe there's something to it. So I appreciate that. And so I think, just wanted to put that out to you.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about, the what I learned, the evolution of that. How did that occur, and what made you decide to go into that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let me see. I started the channel, I think it was about 4 years ago. I started it with, I was looking for some videos explaining low carb in a kind of intuitive and thorough way. Like you said, a kind of fair, level-headed approach to it, not really overselling it, but just kind of giving as many of the facts as possible. And so my very first video, I don't think you can find it anywhere because I took it down because it wasn't very good at all. And I ended up making my first video was on a different topic, but basically I couldn't find a video explaining low carb to the degree that I was hoping to find on YouTube. And so I just decided to make it myself. And I didn't actually, well, it was part of the narrative of a video called longevity and why I eat one meal a day. That one, surprisingly, it's only my second video, but that's still one of the best performing videos. Yeah, so it just kind of started from this thought of like, there's really good blogs, there's really good books on all these different subjects I'm interested in, but there's nothing good on YouTube. So let me give it a shot. And then it did really well, like way better than I expected. And so I just kind of kept going with it. And as I was going with the channel, my kind of views and understanding of nutrition evolved to where I was able to be at a point to where when I think it might have even been your podcast with Joe Rogan that was one of the things that got me interested in the carnivore diet. And at the time I had like learned enough about nutrition to where I was ready to, let's say, accept, or I could see how all of it made sense. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah, and I guess just since you've done that, I mean, it seems you're still, at least in favor of meat consumption. I'll put it that way. I mean, we see a huge push to sort of, demonize it, get people to eat, the plant-based products. And is it fair to say that you would maybe disagree with that sentiment?
Oh yeah, for sure. The plant-based quote unquote products I don't think are good in any way. Especially these kind of over processed things trying to be dairy, but they're not dairy. They're just a bunch of seed oils and soy protein. I think that's pretty awful, actually. And yeah, I'm quite actually my diet is quite animal based.
Let me ask, hey, Masa, I know you've got a prepared, she did a much better job than I did. She's prepared questions and I just kind of wing it. But Masa, why don't you, if you've got something you want to ask about, go ahead, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Joseph. Very excited to have you. I've been a fan of your YouTube channel, and it gives an opportunity to really nerd out on a lot of topics, and it provides the research on a lot of things that I'm very interested in, but I don't have the time to actually research it. And it's very attractive enough visually so that I can just send it to a lot of people when I want to present why cholesterol is not bad. I just send them one of your videos, and it's very convincing, very scientific. So amazing work. I was just wondering what motivates you to go deep into these topics, or how do you find the next topic to make a video about? Because you've made videos about all the way from like habit building to fasting to a lot of really cool topics.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks. It's always really like I don't get well, especially because I don't really show my face, so people don't really know who I am. It's not often that I get to meet fans, so that's really fun. It's really nice to hear. But as far as how I look for topics and what motivates me to go deeper into different topics, basically I'm just reading things has been a hobby of mine for a long time, and I'll find something and then I'll just stop and think like, wait, okay, so they said that, but how does that work? Like, what's the mechanism behind that? Or they're saying this and that fits into a nice package. It sounds nice and it's intuitive and it makes sense, quote unquote makes sense. But is that really how it works? And so a lot of the times, mainly it's just me willing to be like, I don't really get this, or one, it's just like, I don't think I get it enough. So then I go and check it out for myself uh, as best as I can. Or two, I feel like they're not telling the whole part of the story, or just, it's not satisfying enough for me. So I try and link the pieces together myself.
Very cool. You use a lot of research articles for your work, and as we all know, there's a lot of research articles that are actually not accurate. There are either confounding variables, or it's a bad research, or it's too short term, or they think that they know the mechanism that leads to something, such as cholesterol and all the good stuff that you talk about. How do you distinguish which research articles you can actually rely on and are credible, or which ones you should just toss?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me see. So basically, I just kind of pick the ones that fit my narrative the best, and I just kind of throw it in there. No, I'm just kidding. So basically, I'll take a look at the abstract to see if it's okay. Is it addressing the things that I'm looking for? And then I'll have to skim through a good portion of it to see, to really find that out. Like, is it something you can rely on? A lot of times, it's going to depend pretty much each time what kind of research paper it is. But for example, let me see. A lot of times, if there's rodent research and it's talking about like, okay, here's this rodent study we did showing how this or that diet is good or bad, then I'll say, okay, what was the exact diet that they fed to the rodent? What were the other components of the diet that they didn't talk about? And so a good example is this one paper I found. It said something like terrible outcomes for the offspring of pregnant mice doing a ketogenic diet. And so I was like, whoa, that doesn't sound too good. I should probably check that out. And so I was reading through it, and it sounded like pretty much everything that was happening in the offspring was just terrible. It made it sound like a ketogenic diet is going to be awful. And I actually got into that because a friend of mine got pregnant recently. So that was kind of shocking to me. But then I actually looked at the diet. It's from a company called TechLad, and you can actually see what are the specific formulations that they use for these rodent chows when they're doing studies like this. And the fat source was entirely Crisco. So it was Crisco and a little bit of corn oil. So you get this like hydrogenated shortening, which is already known to have all these terrible effects. And then they're going and saying, okay, look, it's a keto diet because it's mostly, all the energy or like 60% of the diet is coming from fat, but then it's straight up Crisco. So, at that point I decided, you're just gonna have to throw that away, throw it in the trash. Um, but yeah, you can kind of dig around. Like a lot of times you're having to dig around and like try and find, like, did they address or did they account for all these other peripheral factors that could have a big impact. Let me see one more example. Maybe I can make this quick. There was a crossover diet with a vegan, it's a crossover study with a group doing a vegan diet and a keto diet. And they each did each diet for 2 weeks. And I think it was the water loss. Yeah, the water loss on the keto diet was more significant. So the total weight loss was more significant on the keto diet, but it was mostly water lost. But then the vegan diet had more fat lost. So that one was interesting. But to say, okay, this is better, we can, I guess, yeah, in terms of just straight up fat loss, there's a point for that for a vegan diet. But then you look at the glucose and insulin levels, they're far better in the ketogenic diet. And let me see, there's one other thing. Yeah, I think that was the main thing. Like they were trying to make this big point of, like, vegan gives you better weight loss. But then if you look at the blood glucose and the insulin markers, it's just far better for the ketogenic diet. So, I mean, like that study, they'll all have some value. You just kind of have to separate what the results are saying from what the conclusion they're writing is. So a lot of times there's a lot of good studies that have good data. It's just the conclusions they come up with are not necessarily reflecting the data very well.
Absolutely. You made quite a few videos about the carnivore diet and you talked about it. I'm curious to know if you ever tried it for yourself and what results did you see?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I did. How long did I do it for? It was at least 3 weeks. I wish I did it longer. But let me see. So I've always had an issue with overeating. How do I put it? Like, I, even on keto, like, things would get better to the point where I would nail it down to where my cravings only consisted of, I'm bored and I want to eat something. So keto really did wonders in that sense. Like, I just kind of was totally satiated on a physiological level, but I still had this feeling of like, yeah, I want to eat something that'd be fun. But with carnivore, I just had it was some, like, I just had so much energy and focus that once I had my meal, I completely forgot about, that whole, like, oh, it'd be nice, it'd be fun to eat something. Like, I was just too focused in whatever I was doing, like hanging out with my friends, working out, doing my research, editing my videos. And it was really clear and stable throughout the day. So I didn't have, a lot of times, even with keto, I would get a dip in motivation or productivity after I had my big meal. But with carnivore, I just kept going. I would just keep going, do whatever I wanted to do without any worries about, like, having to manage my motivation. The other thing is, I swear I was doing less exercise during this time, but I was getting, like, leaner and more ripped, and yeah, my body composition improved despite not really changing my exercise routine. In fact, it maybe even got worse.
Wow, that's amazing. So what foods did you decide to introduce back to your diet?
Um, Let me see. What I introduced, it wasn't really deliberate, and it wasn't really like, I'm gonna do this because I think it'll have a good effect. It was mainly like, I wanted to go out and eat with my friends, so I just kind of got back into that rhythm of going out and having whatever meal my friends were having. Um, Yeah. So, but I generally avoid grains and of course seed oils and sugar as much as I can all the time. Mhm.
You recently made a video about coffee, and I know it's pretty controversial. I know folks in our community, we love our coffee. But I myself have struggled with the issues that you mentioned in the video. I feel like when I drink coffee, my hunger increases, and also I get more anxiety later in the evening. And I looked into Dave Feldman's research. He basically says some people are kind of like hyper responders to caffeine. In addition to his research about cholesterol, he also delves deep into caffeine, where some people have like an insulin response to caffeine. I've never measured that for myself, but I did notice. So tell us a little more about that, and if you personally decided to quit coffee after that research.
Yeah. That's funny that you say that because I met Dave in Houston, Texas. It might have been a little over 2 years ago. And yeah, he was talking about that. He was saying people get just super high triglycerides, specifically when they're doing carnivore and drinking coffee. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I didn't really totally understand how that worked at the time, but um, mostly what got me interested in like what are the effects that coffee is having on me. It was just kind of paying attention to myself and finding like, hey, I'm kind of like really high strung lately. Like, what's going on? I was trying to figure that out. And then I started paying more attention. I was like, oh, hey, it's the coffee. And it's funny because as I was noticing that, I remembered what was it a long time ago when I was quite young. I was maybe 14. I wasn't drinking coffee at the time. My older brother, was drinking coffee. And then he said to my mom, he said, "Hey, mom, I'm going to drink a bunch of coffee and get mad." And she laughed. She laughed because she knew exactly what he meant. Like it's kind of, it makes us irritable. And I've found that out for myself recently. And then, like I said before, I've always been trying to like pinpoint what is messing with my diet, like sorry, my appetite. Like I always feel like I have a high appetite pretty much no matter what, unless of course I'm doing carnivore. And then when I tried taking coffee out for a month, then I noticed my appetite would actually go away when I ate food. And it was interesting. There was one part of it, it was hard to describe. It was like I would eat, and then I would have a good, decent meal, mostly a lot of fatty meat. And then there would be this feeling I hadn't really experienced too often when I was drinking coffee, of like, it was like this kind of pleasurable feeling in my stomach of like, I'm satiated. I don't know how to describe it. Like it felt good, almost like I was getting like a stomach massage. Not like anything was moving around there. Just this like nice, relaxed feeling. And I didn't really like. I had stopped the coffee for about a week at this point, and then I didn't really connect the two. I was like, oh man, I feel really good and really chill. What is this? But yeah, that's for me with coffee. Like I feel like I'm a little more irritable. Yes, I would say I'm more productive, I'm more focused, I'm more motivated to get things done, but it's almost in this like I'm pressured, like I have to get this done or something bad is going to happen. So it's not I mean it has its effects, like it has all the good effects we know coffee for, but yeah, it makes me irritable. I feel like it raises my appetite. I'm a little more anxious, a little more high strung. Yeah.
Mhm. That's very interesting. I've been trying to skip breakfast and do intermittent fasting for the morning, but it seems like as soon as I drink my coffee, I'm like, God, I'm so hungry. But it's not particularly hungry. It's like a stress response. And for me,
Mm,
when I get stressed, I calm myself with eating. And I just feel
mm.
like I'm hungry, but I'm really not. I'm just jittery from the coffee.
Hey,
Oh, so
Joseph,
you
let
get.
me let me
Mhm.
let me jump in and ask a quick question. There's people in there, folks. Can you give us a little bit? Are you willing to share a little bit more of your background? Where kind of, without getting too personal, kind of your general, what brought you into doing this stuff?
Yeah, sure. So let me see. Yeah, I'm from. To give you a quick introduction, I'll leave some things out, but I'm from Texas. I've been living in Japan the past 10 years. I came here to study. Um, are you from Texas?
I spent about 20 years. I'm a Hook'em Horns guy. So I went to UT. So I
Oh,
lived in
nice,
Austin and sort of
nice.
stuff. So anyway, Masa was a Texas A&M Aggie. I don't hold that against her, but and I don't know what your affiliation is, but anyway, no, it's got Texas. I got a special place in my heart for Texas.
Oh, cool, great. Yeah, yeah. Texas is great. I've been wanting to go back, but I can't recently for yeah, Corona reasons. But yeah, I grew up in Texas. I went on a study abroad to Japan in college, and ever since I graduated, I've been in Japan for about 10 years now. And so, what got me into this was, let's say, I was in a pretty high stakes, high pressure job. It was fun. Um, how do I put it? Yeah, it was fun. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to succeed, and then you were. It was commission based, so the better you did. So I had a lot of motivation to do that. Anyways, I was trying to figure out a way to stay awake as long as I could um, without getting that coffee crash or jitters. And then I found this paper about orexin. They sprayed this stuff orexin into monkeys' nostrils, and it would take these monkeys who were like 20 hours sleep deprived, and then they were indistinguishable from a monkey who had slept like perfectly after this spray. So that was my first, I think that was my first introduction to really reading through a research paper and being like, oh, hey, you can just find this stuff online and read through it and glean something from it. Um, so I don't know if that really answers the question, but there was something about that, something about reading about that, where I kind of felt like, hey, I went the extra step to actually look at this research paper, read through it, and I feel like I've learned something. I never did find erection. It was like $1,000 on maybe, I think it was the website Sigma Aldrich, so I never really got it, but there was something fun and exciting about that, like kind of having a specific thing that I wanted to learn, I wanted to find out, and then really go into the source and doing what I could to understand it. I didn't really do much with that erection thing, of course, but um, that got me into digging deeper on certain topics on health. And around that time, I had heard my friends talking about low carb, and it sort of made sense, but not totally. Like I still had a ton of questions, and so I started digging more and more. And before I knew it, I was spending like hours on this every day.
Mhm. Very cool. I'm curious to know, you seem like an open person based on all the topics that you made videos about. I was just wondering, and feel free to veto my question if it's personal, but have you experimented? Let me ask it like this. Are you going to make videos about psychedelics, or is that something that would interest you?
Yeah, actually, I did make a video on psychedelics. It's unlisted. I made it a long time ago. So I went to Amsterdam, and let me see. Yeah, I went to Amsterdam. I mean, it's legal there, so I thought I would partake in what they had to offer. And I took a really high dose. Terrence McKenna would call it a heroic dose. And yeah, it's still a pretty indescribable feeling, but I feel like something kind of like I always considered myself an open-minded person, but after that, I feel like really my openness was magnified. So yeah, I maybe I'll make a video on psychedelics. It's just even after doing that and drinking a really bad tasting tea in South America, it's I still don't know like what I could offer on it at this point. Like it's hard to come up with anything concrete in it. I know Tim Ferriss is investing in a lot of research on this, so maybe I will get back into it. The other thing is maybe I would have to post it somewhere off of YouTube. Like it really seems like, and this is unfortunate to say, but it seems like people are getting, or I suspect people are getting, having repercussions for certain topics they talk about on like a channel wide level. Like they'll post one video and then the let's say it's not a favorable video for the AdSense, then it's not that that video will get demonetized, but it's kind of like reducing the favorability that the algorithm provides for their whole channel. This is, I don't have any proof for that, so don't quote me on that. It's just kind of something like I've been suspecting, and maybe that's just a part of me being paranoid. I know there's like a channel from, I think it's from the Netherlands, where they just straight up try different drugs. So maybe I should just kind of just relax and do it and make a good video about it. But that's actually a topic I'm really interested in. So the other thing is I want to get it right, make a really good video, so that actually makes it harder to do it.
Very cool. Shawn, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, I'm just trying to get some of the questions that our folks have. Somebody was asking about if you could make a video regarding the fact checkers, because we have fact checkers that apparently are the ones that determine what is considered to be the right science. And it's kind of interesting to see what the credentials are. I don't know. Is that something you'd be interested in doing, or is that you might get fact checked for fact checking the fact checkers? I'm not sure.
Yeah. That would be kind of interesting. I think it would come down to a sort of kind of my expert against yours sort of thing. But at the same time, I think I was just talking with my friend about this the other day. Like, so I released this video called "Why Were the Ancient Egyptians So Fat and Unhealthy?" And then two different vegan YouTubers, quote unquote, debunked me. And then I was writing my response to the debunking, which is a response to my original video. And then after a while, it didn't really feel worth my time. Maybe we'll get back to that later. But and then we were talking about how like the likelihood of someone watching my video and then watching that debunking video is really low. But then the likelihood of someone saying, "Hey, I'm going to watch this video," and say, "Oh, is that really how it is?" Then they find the debunking video. And then they find the debunking video and then they think, "Oh, is that really how that is? So let me go find the debunking of the debunking video." I feel like it's like does that make sense? Like it's too far down to where I don't think too many people are interested enough to like look at a video, then look at the debunking, then look at the debunking of the debunking.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's just kind of something I was talking about recently. So maybe I'll make a video on that sometime. Can't guarantee it though.
Very cool. I recently saw your comments on Jordan Peterson's recent interview or podcast with Tim Ferriss, and it seems you actually use his footage quite a bit in some of your videos. One of the most recent videos was about testosterone, and if using social media actually reduces our testosterone, or I think it also applies to women, whatever the equivalent of testosterone is for us. Seeing all these amazing people on YouTube, definitely I've noticed that has an effect on like feeling like you're not as good as you thought you could be. But I was just wondering, so yeah, back to Jordan Peterson, you use some of his footage and your videos. What are some of the most interesting takeaways that you learned from Jordan Peterson?
Oh man, that's a good question. Let me see. I think so. He wrote this paper called Psychological Entropy. One second, let me find the full title. Psychological entropy. Okay, yeah. So he wrote this paper called Psychological Entropy, a framework for understanding uncertainty related anxiety. And so I don't think Peterson talks about this specifically too much, but there was something really interesting about this paper that kind of grabbed me, because I often feel like, let's say, a part of whatever negative feeling I may feel on a day-to-day basis, a lot of it I feel like comes from uncertainty. And I didn't really put the implications of that together until I read this paper. And he was explaining how the experience of anxiety is essentially the experience of uncertainty. Like, I think a lot of people mistake anxiety for being fear. But if you're in a fearful situation, like a tiger, you walk down a hall and you see a tiger, you're really scared, but you're 100% certain of what to do. You turn around, run out of there. But if you're in a situation where you don't know what to do, then that's what the experience of anxiety is. And so, yeah, I wish I had read it more recently. I might be able to tell you something more interesting on it. But just kind of understanding that, and then going and trying to reduce uncertainty in my life as much as I could, like try and keep a morning routine. Like it sounds really basic, but simple things like being more organized, making my space more organized, like whatever, my workflow more organized, keep the same routines. These all act to reduce uncertainty, because it's like, what am I going to do? It's 2:00. What am I going to do? Oh, well, this is always the time that I arrive at this cafe and work, so I know exactly what I'm going to do. Or where is this bill of mine that I need to pay? And I sort of remembered it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm actually organized and I have a place for the bills. So here it is. So I'm actually a pretty disorganized person. So that might not sound, it might kind of, like, other people might be thinking like, duh. But actually for me, something kind of that annoys me about myself is there's so many things where I know they're a good idea, but I won't do them unless I know how they work. So this was finally one of those things where it was like, oh, hey, now I know exactly the benefit of being organized. Now I should probably actually do that. Versus before, I would just think like, well, the time that I spend, organizing everything or developing an organizational system, I could be getting work done. So I just kind of assumed that I was ending up at the same amount of efficiency. And then, so once I read this, then it made what he was saying about, he says clean up your room for a different reason. He means to say clean up your room, get your own problems in order before you attempt to fix the world. But I kind of related that back to this paper. And yeah, actually I made a video on this. It's called, what is it called? It's something like, why are you so uncertain? Mm-hmm. Where I explain it a little bit better. But another thing that was really interesting for me is it got me more interested in fiction. I've always been interested in nonfiction books. I barely read any fiction or listen to any fiction. But it got me more interested in fiction and things like the Bible. Like, actually, I've never been a religious person, but listening to the way he put it, I came to see the value in reading something like the Bible, because it's a compendium showing like what are the values of a civilization. And it's like these concepts that people couldn't necessarily express explicitly, like, hey, I don't know, don't steal from your neighbor or they're going to hate you, and then the community will outcast you, and things will be very bad for you. But you can explain it in a story. You know, this person stole something, things didn't go well for him. And so you kind of learn more about the nature of the people, the civilization that we came from by reading into things like that. Whereas before I didn't really have any particular interest in that. So I thought that was really fun to have. It's always really fun when someone can make me interested in something I was never interested in before. So that was something really good. Another thing is, I think just this general message of it's not okay to be a weak victim. Like, I think that's probably my favorite thing from him. Like, yeah, there's, I think that's the core of several things he explains much more clearly, and I think that's a message we need nowadays with people kind of. Yeah, I don't want to get into that too much, but there's a certain kind of like pride in being a victim recently. It seems to be the case, though I'm not too living in Japan. I'm not too familiar with that, so I'm probably not the best person to comment on that.
I'll just make a comment. You know, I just recently at age 54, in fact, I said my second jujitsu class yesterday, and talking about anxiety, you know, and not knowing what to do. You get some 250-pound person that's got his, strangling you, and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to get out of this, and it's kind of interesting. And so it's just kind of a, kind of an interesting, a very acute in your face analogy that's fun. And, with enough knowledge and time, you'll figure that out. And so you can kind of learn how to not be so, I guess, compromised where you don't know what to do. Let me ask you about, the videos you make. They're high quality, obviously a lot of effort and time and goes into how much, just like on the average video, what does that represent from a time, from editing, from researching, from gathering the source materials in the, all that? What are you looking at to put a video together typically?
That's a good question. So I'm pretty much all the time, like, it's just fun for me. So reading into these topics, I'm just doing it all the time in my free time. So it's hard to put a specific number because, of course, the insights I glean from that time are going to make it into the video. But I'd say, like, when I really say, okay, I have this topic and now I'm going to research specifically for that topic and get the video out, I'd say it could take anywhere from 50 to 80 hours, depending on like how much I fret on like how difficult the concepts are to get across, or like how much I'm trying to level up my editing. Yeah, something about 50 to 80 hours. That might be overestimating a little bit. I think there's only maybe one video I can think of where it really took up to 80 hours.
And on that note, you were talking about the fact that the victim mentality and stuff like that. I was just wondering if at any time you would want to get into more controversial topics, because I know there are pros and cons. Obviously, if you stay politically impartial, then you can appeal to more audience. But at the same time, I think there's something, if you're a little more inflammatory and divisive, actually sometimes you get more audience. So if your curiosity takes you where you are curious about, I don't know, more like gender or political inclinations and stuff like that, is it something that you're planning on making videos about, or will you stay away from all of that?
Let me see. I think I might ease into more controversial topics, and I think I've sort of tiptoed around, my thoughts on veganism. So I think that would probably be a good way to kind of wet my feet in terms of getting into controversial topics. Like, for a while I kind of avoided it, and then as I've learned more about the detrimental effects it's going to have specifically on kids, especially on women trying to get pregnant women, the kids of the babies of the pregnant women, and then those people as they grow up. I feel like I'm getting more and more pushed to speak about this properly. Like I've sort of tiptoed around it, and now there's kind of, you know, vegan products, quote unquote, food products showing up in Japan, which are, like I was saying, just a bunch of seed oils and then like a defatted soybean meal or something. So yeah, that's, maybe I will get into it slowly, but I would probably start there.
Very cool. And someone's asking, and that was my question too, that you remain anonymous, you don't show your video. Is that just a personal choice for privacy, or is there a specific reason for that?
Yeah, it's just kind of like yeah, it's more personal. I feel like the fame would be more hassle than it's worth. I don't really have anything like any legal reasons I can't show my face or anything like that. It's just yeah, it's part that. The other thing is, it's kind of, there's something fun about not being about being this kind of like floating figure behind the information, because at least I hope that it makes it to where people have to engage more directly with the information that I put out. Like they can't be like, oh yeah, it's that Joseph guy that I know, or it's that Joseph guy that I don't know, he looks stupid, so I don't want to watch his information. So they're more likely to just kind of be like, okay, I don't really know who he is. I don't know his credentials. I don't know what his background is, but what he's saying is kind of interesting. All right, let me listen to that information. Yeah, so it's a little bit of those two things.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. You know, just engaging with the information and not the person. I kind of have the opposite with me. I mean, there's people just absolutely just hate my guts and everything about me, and anything I say is going to be, you know, considered ridiculous. And there's other people.
I've seen some of the messages you get. They're pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I had a fun one this morning or last night about a guy that, I mean, he literally, you know, he said, "Well, I hope your arteries clog up." And I see an ER, and then also, how can you be so stupid as to promote weightlifting? Don't you know it's horrible for your bones? Which I just kind of chuckle at. It's just the kind of absurdity of some of the opinions out there. But, you know, I guess, you know, I will say, and this is something that I don't know, and you kind of alluded to this and touched, you know, just a little bit. We got a lot of people out there that say really, really stupid stuff, and some stuff people don't like. And there has been this sort of, we're just not going to let that message get out, censorship. You know, there was this one particular, she goes by like the vegan teacher, you know, kind of annoying, you know, just, she makes a lot of videos. She's got millions of subscribers or followers on, I think, TikTok or something like that. And she was recently banned. I actually was very upset by that. I mean, no, I didn't, you know, I wasn't crying or anything, but I just don't like to see that happening to anyone, regardless if you agree with their beliefs or not. Do you, I mean, I know with politics that became pretty significant. We saw a lot of that. We see that with some of the health stuff with coronavirus. We see that, but I mean, it seems like it's creeping the other areas. Although maybe we're seeing a backlash against it. What is your sense of the perception? Do you? Because I know you mentioned, and Masa mentioned, hey, if you go out on a limb and say something that's a little non-mainstream, you do have, and you mentioned the algorithm shuts you down, you know, on YouTube. And when you get to 1 million plus subscribers, like you have, an algorithmic shift can be pretty substantial.
Yeah, it's kind of something I can't really put my finger on to how big of an issue it is or not. But it's just kind of this, how should I put it? It's always something that I have in the back of my mind. Like, there's certain topics I don't want to touch on. I don't really feel like I'm self-censoring myself because I'm worried about that too much. But I do feel like there's certain things that you're not really allowed to talk about, or it's, if you do talk about it, it's not going to bode well for you at all. And so, yeah, I just, it's hard to put, like, I feel like, and there's certain sides of it. I'm wondering what the motivation is for people to just be like, I'm not going to engage with your information, but because you are speaking about this topic, what seems to be this way that I perceive, or let's say there's this topic that you're not allowed to speak negatively about. Okay, it seems that what you're saying is alluding to that, so now I deem you as being nuts or crazy or something. And then that is like, and then that'll have repercussions for the person's social media account or YouTube account. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I don't really have an understanding of how much of an issue that is, but I just wish things were more relaxed where people could talk about things more openly and actually kind of break down these touchy topics without immediately getting like so much backlash for even bringing the topic up. Like to give you a kind of example, like if someone was to say, like, oh, what are the side effects of vaccines? Then that's all you said. You've just said that, and you're kind of like, I'm just curious about this. Like all pharmaceuticals have side effects. What are the side effects to that? Then you're already kind of put in a certain bucket. You're like, oh, this guy is one of those guys. And I don't really think just something as simple as that would have any necessarily any repercussions for you on the YouTube client, but maybe it would with your audience. Yeah, sorry, that was a little rambling, but do you know what I'm trying to say, Dr. Baker?
No, I do. And I'm just wondering,
Okay.
do you ever, because I've had people ask me to back up my YouTube content onto various alternate channels. I think one's called BitChute. I haven't really done that. Is that
Mhm.
something you do or plan to do or have considered doing at some point?
Oh yeah. I've been meaning to do it. I started doing it at one point, and then it was taking too long, and I forgot about it and got back into other projects, but not necessarily for that reason. I mean, a number of things could happen. I, I don't know. Someone could hack my account, or what was it? I remember hearing about some channel, a completely unrelated channel, maybe a gaming channel. Like the guy did something, and then everybody hated him, and then this like band of people, like mass flagged his videos, and then that I don't think it deleted the channel, but it put it in hiatus. So those kind of things I don't really see that happening to my channel, but yeah, I've been meaning to back everything up completely.
I have two questions for you. One is if you have any advice for anyone who wants to get into the creator space. I've recently been thinking about starting, I kind of started my own podcast. It's called Lady Nerd. And I talk to interesting people that just a lot of open discussions about a lot of open ideas. Any advice for that? And I guess also one of my fears is the controversy and like just turning off some people by some of the ideas that I have, because obviously some people like what you said, some people don't. And yeah, I was just wondering if you have any advice around that.
Yeah, sure. So let me see. The first thing that comes to mind is you kind of have to be a marketer slash salesman to like you really have to. You could have the best podcast content, but it won't necessarily get picked up if you have like a really not so sexy title. Like the video is not the podcast title isn't immediately eye catching. Like with YouTube, I am constantly tweaking the thumbnails to make like I'll go through several different reiterations of the thumbnail until I get a sense that I'm kind of guessing like, okay, someone at a glance can either it'll pique their curiosity or they can immediately get a clear picture of what this video is going to be about. So I might do things like kind of or other things like people are attracted to eyes. That's a common marketing tactic, which is why you just see these women with huge eyes on magazines. So I will even without putting just straight up googly eyes on them, I'll actually kind of like highlight the eyes or like increase the brightness or contrast on the eye of whatever is on my thumbnail. And so Yeah, I think, of course, you'll want to refine your like you want to have great content. Like you have to get people there, and then you have to keep them there. So yeah, things like really learning about what makes a good title, what makes a good thumbnail. Um, Not even so much the description. Like I'm not too familiar with other platforms, but on YouTube nowadays, I don't think the tags even matter. It's more just like the title, the thumbnail, and then um, I think YouTube will automatically pick up what's being said in the video to create the equivalent of tags.
Mm.
So those two things, and then yeah, just kind of refine your content as well as you can. Some people have a really, I guess, entertaining personality, and people will just come to their channel because they want to see that person. They want to see them be funny, do whatever antics they're known for. And then other people, I think it's like they present a good story or video essay. I think that's kind of more what I fall into, which is why you see really different view counts on my videos, because it's not really like oh yeah, like okay, Joseph's gonna tell some cool jokes, like so let me watch his red light video. Like if they don't have interest in red light, they're probably not gonna click on it. Yeah, does that help? That's a little vague, but I would say like you really have to get those two in balance. The, let's say, the face of your content, like what they see before they click, and then of course you want to refine the contents of the content itself as much as you can.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I guess my other question is, do you have any favorite YouTube channels or podcasts or books that you could recommend?
Let me see. Let me look at my Audible real quick.
I hear What I Learned is a good podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Let's see, I really like, it's usually like a mishmash of lectures that I'm looking at. So yeah, I'm mostly like searching for things myself, so I don't really have too many channels that I'm subscribed to. Let me see. I do like the like, what is it? The Ancestral Health Symposium, something like that, or Low Carb Down Under. Um, were you on one of those, Dr. Baker?
I was on Low Carb Down Under. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I thought I saw you on there. So yeah, sorry, I wish I had a channel I could recommend. I always like Nerdwriter. He's got really cool editing and just really good storytelling skills. So even if he's talking about a subject that I'm not interested in at all, I'll just watch it anyways, because I always feel like it's just kind of fun to see where he goes with it, and I feel like I can always learn something from him. Books, let me see, tons of books. Recently, what was a good one? Yeah, maps of meaning is pretty good. I think it's worth it. Like you really have to dig through it, but I think that one's worth it, and you can, it's like something you can come back to over and over again. There was this really interesting book, Sand Talk, talking about kind of like the way indigenous cultures, particularly the indigenous, what's the right term? The indigenous people in Australia. There was a person, his name's Tyson Yunka Porta, and he is just kind of talking about how they have different ways of viewing the world and understanding the world, and how they uh, interpret the world. Like one thing was they would have these fights where it was like a sort of way to get over conflicts, and they would be fighting with each other with knives, but there was only specific places that they could slice each other, so they're not really trying to like wound each other. It's like specific places that really won't do have any bad repercussions, I think. But then the understanding was that at the end of the fight, they are given the exact same cut that their opponent received. So it's kind of like teaching them like this conflict, even if you win the conflict, you have to bear the responsibility of the sum of the conflict. So a lot of interesting things he has to say about that. And he kind of explains the psychology behind it. Yeah, maybe I could send you guys a list of, otherwise I'd just be sitting here digging through my Audible and my Kindle, but I could send you guys a list of a couple books that I think is good. You could post it on wherever you post this.
Yeah, I would love that. And also that link to your unlisted video about psychedelics. I would love to
Oh,
see.
sure. Yeah.
I think that's all my questions. Thanks so much, Sean.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful, Joseph. Appreciate the work you do. I'm just, I guess, just can you talk to, I mean, when you're making these videos, obviously you want people to watch them. Is there a time length that you find is ideal? Is there a way to hook, obviously you hook them in the first 30 seconds, most people will watch for a few seconds and then flip it off. Do you consciously think about those things as you're making a video? You can, we could all do 3-hour sessions, if we wanted to, but then, the retention, like I'll put an interest in, and I know people will be horrified, but I rarely ever watch Rogan's podcast. It's too damn long. I'm just like, I can't commit 3 hours to listen to a single topic. It just doesn't work for me. So how do you like, I'm going to give this topic 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and this is how I hook the audience?
Yeah, that's a good question. Most of the time I don't really pick. I've been thinking about experimenting with this more recently. I've been thinking of doing videos that are shorter, maybe 7 minutes long, but usually I'll try and pick a topic that has enough meat to it to where it'll take about 12 to, let's say, 17 minutes to get to the conclusion. And so that's not really me trying to optimize like my views or anything. Like, that's just for me, that kind of video is what interests me. So I hope that my audience likes it too. But yeah, like you're saying, I'm trying to hook people right away within the first even 15 seconds. So I'll spend a lot of time on the introduction when I'm working on my script. So I kind of look at it like the first 15 seconds, and then how can I keep them interested in within the first minute, and then 3 minutes, and then 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, if they're not going to stick around, then they're probably not going to stick around. Like, I don't want to, after 5 minutes, I don't want to keep like throwing in some, I don't know, random shocking fact or something like that. So yeah, I try to really catch them early on, and then other than that, I just don't really go past 20 minutes too often. I think one time I did a 30-minute video. It did pretty good, but it's a lot of work, and I feel like it gets like more and more work after 17 minutes. So
Thank you. Just what I learned is the name of the YouTube channel. I guess that's where most people go to find your information. Is there any other places where you put out material or anything else anybody needs to know about?
Maybe my Twitter. I tweet a bunch of, it's kind of more off the cuff, just spontaneous things. So if you'd like to see my Twitter, yeah, what is it? It's at J Everett Learned. Yeah, I'll send it in the notes later.
Perfect.
Yeah. Dr. Baggett, while I have you here, do you mind if I ask you one or two questions?
No, that's fine. Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Or unless you still had questions for me, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. It's just whatever way. I'll be happy to answer questions, sir.
So I was recently, I've been meaning to try I just thought it was a sort of unique concept and be a fun experiment. I was thinking of, for 30 days, eating only things that came from the sea. So at first I wanted to say only fish or only seafood. And then I was thinking at some point I might require some energy, like in the form of glucose or fat, but fish are so low in fat. I don't know. Do you have any experience with eating like super low fat, no carb, super high protein? I think you eat mostly fatty meat, right?
I mean, I've done that to get leaner, but I don't know that I would sustain it for a month. I mean, I can do that for like a fish and kind of lean red meat type of approach for 4 or 5 days in a row, and then I tend to want to refeed fat. So that's kind of the basis of a lot of weight. A lot of times when I want to get particularly lean. So I've not really seen a lot of people be successful with a all seafood or an all chicken or an all lean meat diet. It just doesn't seem to be, and there's something called rabbit starvation, which occurs when you
Mm.
just don't have enough fat in there. So, and you are right, unless, I mean, some of the fattier fish, things like, salmon and some of these other ones that have enough fat, even then, I think you're still going to be looking for energy, so I don't know how successful. I've seen people try to do it with eggs. I just haven't seen anybody able to sustain it more than a couple of weeks. So, I think you can do that for a period of time. Most people, it's a couple of days, and then like I said, if you're trying to do it to get lean, I do it 3 or 4 days, and then you'll kind of get this. Your body will let you know you need some fat pretty quick, and then you just kind of refeed it, and then just don't go over. If your goal is to lean out, you don't overdo it on the day you refeed your fat. But I've and somebody maybe there may be people that have done it successfully long term, like long term seafood only diet. I'm just not aware of anybody or many people that have done it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I was kind of thinking I might even to really last that long, I might have to put on a bunch of weight beforehand, put on a bunch of body fat beforehand.
Yeah, then you wonder what the point is, It's kind of
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah.
get fat just so you can lose it again. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
maybe. I mean, it's probably
Oh,
the getting fat part, probably the funner part of that, so.
yeah. Um, yeah. Let me see. I want to ask you one other thing. Oh yeah. Is there anything at the moment that you've been experimenting with your diet, or have you been mostly ribeyes 100%, or have you experimented with anything else?
I mean, right now, currently, I'm back to just plain old ribeyes. Right now, I'm doing once a day. I went January, I went to red meat only just for World Carnivore Month. And then February, I said, well, I'm just going to do that now. I'm going to do one meal a day. And so I continued February into March. Just it's been for ease more than anything, for convenience. I just got to cook one time. I don't have to mess up the dishes more than once.
Mm,
Cooking meat can make a lot of a mess, particularly with grease if you're cooking in a cast iron pan. I've done eggs, and I've done seafood, and I've done dairy, and I've done the lean stuff like we talked about. I've played with all those things just to play with them. I honestly just kind of believe I feel the best just eating a bunch of kind of fatty red meat, and that honestly makes it's easiest. I feel the best, simplest. So I kind of I guess I get kind of lazy about it, and but that's what's worked for me. I've done that for years now. And then, like I said, if I feel like I'm going to have some eggs, sometimes I'll do it. I'll even have I had a piece of cake. I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. It was just one of those things. I didn't feel like good, afterwards,
yeah.
but it's one of those things where I generally, I'd say 98% of the time I'm eating red meat and nothing else. So
Wow. Cool. Okay. Um, let me see. Okay. And so I was just recently reading this book. Have you heard of the book Pottinger's Cats?
I haven't read Pottinger's Cats, but I'm aware of the concept, of the Pottinger's Cats with feeding the cats meat, and by that I think it was the third generation they were infertile or something along those lines.
Yeah. So it was basically they
Right.
got
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty
Right. Cooked
cooked
versus
versus
raw. Right.
raw.
Right.
Yeah. So I was actually experimenting a little bit with raw meat.
Hmm.
Um, one day I just kind of wanted to make steak tartare for fun, and then without really expecting anything from it, a little later I just felt this really nice boost in energy and focus, and then I was thinking like, oh, maybe it was the raw meat, and I kind of played with that for a little while, and I'm starting to think it was maybe more the raw fat. I'm not doing like 100% raw meat diet or anything. It's just kind of something I was playing with. But uh, I guess you haven't really experimented with that. You're
I
cooking
have.
everything at
I've done raw meat for a while. I didn't particularly find it to be, one, I didn't find it very palatable, and two, I didn't see any significant benefits in me personally. There's a nice study came out, I think last year. It was actually a pig study, but they used pigs as a proxy for humans, and they fed them various levels of cookedness and doneness and types of different meats on these pigs. And they found, I think they did some of the pigs did the best on, I think it was like a medium well ribeye steak, and it was ground beef. They did a little better on raw ground beef versus cooked ground beef. So you can Google it and find it. I think it was something like, pig study, pigs eating ribeyes or something like that. It's kind of, it touches on that. And there are a lot of proponents out there that say, oh, you got to do it raw. You got to do it raw. It's the best thing. And while there may be some benefits to it, there's also some certain concerns about it. And one is contamination, infection.
Mm.
And it's not just theoretical. I am aware of many people that have gotten significantly sick from eating raw meat. And while many people don't, and most people, you just have to be unlucky, I guess. But I mean, I've seen it enough to where I would at least, my preference would be, at least flash sear it, just touch the edges real hot, and that might mitigate some of that a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like it was an interesting kind of fun novelty. I sort of thought I felt different, but I don't know if it's really worth going all into it to get maybe some marginal theoretical benefit.
Yeah, I mean, some people swear by it, and I've had, like I know some people here they'll eat the little chunks of fat or they suet raw and they really like it. I've tried it; it actually wasn't that bad. I mean, it was, and I guess that's, when the compliment is it wasn't that bad is not really high praise in my mind. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoy cooking my meat and I think it tastes better, and I'd rather eat stuff I like. It's more sustainable for me.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Just one last thing for me. Recently I was listening to, so I was watching a lecture by Chris Nobbs, I think. And
Kenobi.
oh, is that
Yeah,
how?
I had him on the
bad.
podcast. I mispronounced his name and he told me that's Kenobi. So anyway, yeah, Chris Kenobi.
Okay.
We interviewed him a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay. So you must be totally familiar with that. But it seems I feel like him and a couple of other people I've noticed are kind of saying like, hey, maybe we're overselling this carb idea of carb being at the root, grains being at the root of this or that diseases, and maybe the real culprit is these vegetable oils. And that's been kind of a pretty interesting idea for me, especially Paul Saladino was talking about how he was talking about the Egyptian video I made, and he was saying, well, one thing that was overlooked was actually the Egyptians were maybe even the first peoples to be using seed oils. And that could be a big component in their, or what seemed to be declining health for a lot of them. Yeah, I just wanted to ask your thoughts on that. Like, do you feel seed oils, these vegetable oils are pretty big component to the kind of epidemic of awful health we're seeing in
Yeah,
the
I mean,
States and developed countries?
if you're gonna make an argument that food has an impact on our health, I think that's a pretty easy argument to make. I mean, seed oils are certainly one of the newer foods that's been introduced to the human diet. I mean, it's been around at most, 150 years. I'm not sure, Paul talking about seed oils like we process them today. I don't think the Egyptians had access to that. I mean, I think it's one component, and it's probably a significant component, but I don't think you can completely sort of, declare innocence on everything else. I mean, at the very least, you can look at, I think this, and we had a guy named Gabor Idrosi on, and I think this is a very prescient observation about the fact that we now are able to process these foods, grains and things like that, to powder form. To me, the most processed food should be is what you can chew it to. I can't chew food into powder form where the surface area is so incredibly huge relative to, the energy component. So we have these sort of unnatural absorption characteristics. So now you have flour where before you might have had a whole grain. And I think those things are just as likely part of being a culprit. And I would extend that even to protein powder. I don't think we're designed to be eating protein powder or powdered food. I mean, I think that's just something that is a problem. So I think, yeah, certainly the seed oils I think are problematic. And I think they're a large problem, but I don't think the rest of the processed food. I mean, if you go down the grocery store and I mean, we know this ultra processed food, which is typically it's a seed oil, it's a grain that's been refined, plus or minus a sugar, of some sort, and then a bunch of other chemicals you can't pronounce that are make up that mix. I think that combination, all of them probably have some component, in my view.
That's interesting. I've been meaning to find this study again that I had found a while back. It was comparing two diets. One was they had this diet and they gave it to this group of rodents, and then they gave the exact same diet, just they powdered it and gave it to another group of rodents, and they found, I can't remember what it was, but just their health was worse just by simply powdering the same calories, the same contents, and just giving it in the powdered form. So it's a pretty interesting point.
Yeah, I mean, it changes the absorption characteristics of those foods. I mean, we're designed. I mean, our body has a design where certain hormones are stimulated in sequence over time, and when you powder these things, you just kind of bypass those things. So things like the incretin hormones, the GLPs and the GIPs that are found in the proximal or distal stomach or intestine rather, it leads to dysregulated metabolism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been fun, guys. Thank you, Masa. Thank you again for being a co-host, Joseph. Good luck to you, and thanks for all you do. Looking forward to watching more of your videos, and stop by anytime. You're welcome in this community, and everybody else have a great day.
Thanks a lot. This was fun.
Okay, guys. Take care.
Thanks for
Everybody. See
having
you
me.
later. Bye-bye now.
See ya.